When I was a little girl in Indianapolis, sitting on doctors' porches with post-on pre-debs, wondering would my aunt drag me to church Sunday, I was meaningless, and I wondered if life would give me a chance to mean. I found a new life in the withdrawal from all things not like my image. When I was a teenager, I used to sit on front porch steps conversing the gym teacher's son with embryonic eyes about the essential essence of the universe, recognizing the basic powerlessness of me. But then I went to college where I learned that just because everything I was unreal, I could be real, and not just real through withdrawal into emotional crosshairs or colored bourgeois intellectual pretensions, but from involvement with things approaching reality, I could possibly have a life. So catatonic emotions and time-wasting sex games were replaced with functioning commitments to logic and necessity, and the gray area was slowly darkened into a black thing. For a while, progress was made, along with a certain degree of happiness, because I wrote a book and found a love and organized a theater and even gave some lessons, some lectures on black history, and began to believe all good people could get together and win without bloodshed. Then Hammarskjöld was killed, and Lumumba was killed, and Diem was killed, and Kennedy was killed, and Malcolm was killed, and Evers was killed, and Swerner, Cheney, and Goodman were killed, and Louisio was killed, and Stokely fled the country, and Leroy was arrested, and Rapp was arrested, and Pollard, Thompson, and Cooper were killed, and King was killed, and Kennedy was killed. And sometimes I wonder why I didn't become a debutante, sitting on doctors' porches, going to church all the time, wondering, is my eye makeup on straight? Or withdrawn, discoursing on the stars and the moon, instead of a for real black person who must now feel and inflict pain.
Now, the book fair is honored to welcome back esteemed poet and author Nikki Giovanni as part of our 14th anniversary celebrating National Book Month. She is a national treasure, and we love her spirit and her talent. She needs no introduction. A distinguished professor at Virginia Tech, Nikki has long used her literary gifts to raise awareness of social issues, particularly those of gender and race. She's published more than 24 volumes of poetry, essays, edited anthologies, as well as 11 illustrated children's books. Giovanni is the recipient of numerous awards and the recipient of 27 honorary degrees, as well as the keys to several cities. We asked one of her friends, Miki Turner, to chat with her about her work. Miki is an award-winning journalist and author. She's also the founder of the Annenberg Cross-Cultural Student Association and the director of a university-wide minoring serving institution graduate school recruitment effort at USC.
Nikki, so great to see you, and I'm so happy to have this conversation with you after such a long period of time. But first of all, we need to congratulate you on yet another distinctive honor in your career, being named the writer in residence at Prairie View A&M University, the Toni Morrison writer in residence. How amazing is that? You and Toni were such great friends, and tell me what that means to you at this point in your career.
Oh, Miki, the main reason that I was pleased to accept it is Toni. We were friends, and I guess, I don't know what that verb is. I lose contact with verbs because I say we were, but actually we still are friends. She just is not here right now, and I wanted to be a part of it, and I wanted to help A&M set it up. And Ruth Simmons was a friend of Toni, so we had all of that coming together, and Texas really needs somebody crazy like me to come down there. So I'm excited to be working with the writers and to help them set up, which is what I think of myself as doing, how the Toni Morrison creative writing position will be, how we will move it along from my year to the next, because I'll only be there for this year. And I'm very pleased to do that. But next year there'll be someone else will have to come in, and I wanted to give them an idea of what we were trying to accomplish.
Okay, so you're going to be in person, or are you going to do it virtually, or how's that going to work?
That depends on God and and the airplanes and COVID and a number of things. We're going to start, of course, virtually, and I will be going down because A&M is right outside of Houston, and I
Right.
have a dear friend, uh, uh, Ashley Bryant, who is staying with his niece, who is staying in Houston, and I will be able to get over to see him. Ashley is 96, so
Wow.
I'm not sure that I'll be able to bring Ashley over to A&M. I'm sure they don't know him, and because the black kids don't know anybody, and I'm sure they don't know exactly how close they are to a genius. Uh, uh, Ashley has won every award to be won, but mostly his work is just so beautiful. Whether he had won or not, it would be wonderful. But I want to begin to set up a way of this audience looking at, and I say audience, I should say community, looking at what is around them, what they have. I think Ruth is doing a wonderful job. As I said, I'm pleased that she invited me, and I want to do something that Tony would be proud of.
Absolutely. And, Prairie View is close to my heart because we have a collaboration with them at Annenberg, and we bring students in and we do faculty swaps and all that. So I was thrilled when I heard you were going there, and I'm a big fan of Ruth Simmons. And, it's funny. I remember the one thing Tony once said to me that always sticks in my head, and something I teach my students, is that writer's block is your brain telling you to shut up. That you just need to take a little break. But, in full disclosure, I've admired your work since, I was a little thing growing up in Wyoming, Ohio. And, Karen Kramer, who was one of my English teachers at Wyoming High, gave me a copy of My House when I was, I think, a freshman or sophomore. And that is still the definitive read for me after all these years. And I think there are a couple of lines that I'm always quoting and attributing to you. And one is from My House, when you're talking about, I hope no white person ever has cause to write about me, and the rest of it. And the other one is from the Night Winds book, where you did the poem for Billie Jean and said it's illogical to spit upon a face that you once kissed.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. So, I've always considered you one of the smartest people on the planet. And
I love that. Thank you.
Absolutely. I remember, back in the day, you and your mom sitting in the kitchen watching Jeopardy and knowing all the answers. And I was just amazed. Like, these people are really smart. So let's start off with the new book from 2020. Make Me Rain. I've also found some golden nuggets in here. It was one of my favorite reads during the summer. And, this whole book reminds me of kind of a lyrical quilt. I don't know how to really describe it. It's like this continuous song throughout. And, this patchwork of wisdom that you've made into this song, at Hampton, our alma mater is letting our lives do the singing. And, this is what I felt like you were doing in this book, because it almost traces your whole evolution in a way. Yeah. So what inspired the work here and Make Me Rain?
Well, I've been dealing with water lately. And the book that I have, because I forgot Make Me Rain, is A Good Cry.
Good Cry. I have that too.
And I love a good cry, because I never used to cry. And of course, not crying means that you're holding it in. Mm-hmm. And if you're holding whatever it is, the emotion in, you're going to end up, as I did, with a bit of not, I didn't have a stroke, but I did have a problem. I don't know how else to say it. I just had a problem. And I couldn't remember anything. My doctor put me in the hospital for a couple of days, which was, I think, really wonderful, because I needed rest. And he said, well, what what your problem is. And he goes, you know, your high blood pressure, because if you're Black American, the first thing everybody says, no matter what's wrong with you, is your high blood pressure. And we went through all of that. And his name is Gregory, and I love Gregory so much. He's so cute. And I said, Greg, if you weren't cute, I wouldn't talk to you. But I said, that's the truth. But I said, no, the problem is that I never learned to cry. And I, along with others, need to cry. You know, Mommy died, and you knew my family, but right. Mommy died in June, and Gary died in July, and Anto, my aunt, died in the end of September, I think it was. And so it was bury. That's what you're doing. You're burying people. Well, you don't have time to cry. What you have to do is the work that has to be done. Well, if you're holding all of that in, it's not good for you. Eventually you're going to have some level of, if not a stroke, you know, something is going to happen in your head. You can't do it. You need a good cry. And I loved this book, A Good Cry, simply because it's just making a statement that says, you know, to women particularly, but to men also, it's important to learn to cry. There's no, you know, everybody's like, well, I never cried. You know, it's important to learn to cry, to let that emotion out. And I love that book. But then having finished writing A Good Cry, I came to Make Me Rain, because I thought, well, if I could be anything that I wanted to be and not be a human being, because human beings are crazy and going out. And I think Earth is finished. But I do. But if I could be anything, what would I be? And I would be water. Wow. And I can't think of anything that I'd rather be than water, because water does everything. You know, you walk down the street with someone you care about, and you're holding hands. You can listen to water tap dance on the windowsill. If it's winter, it'll turn to ice, and you'll have something to drink. If it's summer, it will allow you to cool off. You know, water does everything. And I thought, yeah, water is like a Black woman. We do everything. Yeah. Yeah.
That's a great analogy. And so true. So true. Well, you pose a lot of questions in this book, like wondering what song Jesus was singing when he was nailed on the cross, a piece called Query. And if you had to guess, what song do you think he would have sung, and why?
It is well, either It Is Well With My Soul, which was my grandmother's favorite, or Leaning on the Everlasting Arms.
Right.
What I love about the spirituals, and there are, as you know, about 1,000 spirituals that we can identify, is that none of them whine and complain, and none of them seek vengeance. And I think there's something really wonderful about being Black, having gone through all we are going through, not having that's a still that we have not sought vengeance.
Right.
We still seek some level of faith, some level of let's go forward. And I think it's a great thing to be Black. I'm going to recommend that, because
it's easy on the skin, if nothing else. But
well, there's more to being Black than meets the eye, as we all know.
Yes.
But the idea of saying, I'm going to find a way through this. I'm going to find a way to listen to whatever is in, for example, my heart. I speak, Miki, for not a lot, because the COVID, we haven't been out. I haven't been out a lot, but I speak to the kindergarten, high school. I speak to little kids sometimes. I get invited, and I go over and I speak to them, and I say, you know, and it's true. What's important here is not what you're doing. What's important is who you're doing it for. And so right now, it doesn't really matter if you don't like high school, and a lot of kids don't. If you're upset about college, and a lot of people are, you're not in high school or college for yourself. Nobody cares about what you care about. You're doing this for your ancestors. You're doing this for the people sitting in heaven in a rocking chair, smoking a pipe, and looking down and saying, "There's my baby. She graduated." And that's who you're answering to. And I think that is easy enough to forget. And I remember, as do you about Wyoming, I remember when we had kindergarten graduation, and you put on your white dress and your white shoes, and the whole family came, and you got your diploma from kindergarten. because Black Americans were not allowed for the longest to learn how to read and write. And so everybody was very proud that my baby graduated from kindergarten. And as we moved it on, and we did it, 8th grade, when you graduated, you remember when you graduated from 8th grade, how proud the family was. It was a big deal. And you got a diploma that said you were 8th grade graduation. And everybody, it was hung in the house. Everybody was incredibly proud. And then it got to the point that you were graduating from high school. And you did that for those people who were so proud, those people who had worked in the fields, those people who had been whipped and beaten and their names stolen from them. You did what you do, or you do what you do for those people. And that's what has to be. Remember, why do you do what you do? You don't do it for yourself, because honestly, if Amazon wants you to learn something, they'll teach it to you. You know that. I mean, you know Amazon. I mean, you know what I mean. If Kroger's want you to be a part of our team, then they will teach it. Right. So you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for those people sitting in heaven, saying, look at what my baby did. My baby graduated. My baby can read. I think it's so wonderful just to think about those folks sitting up in heaven. And my folks, of course, as you know, were beer drinkers. And so they're sitting up in heaven drinking beer, saying, see, she got a book published. And that's what makes you proud.
Yeah, I remember your mom and the beer watching Jeopardy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking
I gotta say that I don't drink beer just for it. I don't drink. I cook with it.
There you go. All right.
Yeah, cooking with it. I made a pot roast the other day, and I got to tell you, it was really good.
You were such an amazing cook. I mean, you would put together things that people would never imagine putting together, and it would be so good.
It would be good. Yeah, you're right about that.
I remember some mulled wine you made with tea bags, and I'm like, what? And it was so good. Wow. But, in talking about your ancestors, there's a, poem in the new book called Silence about your grandparents. You write about them sitting on the porch in silence, and you didn't quite understand why that was as a child, but as you grew into an adult, you did. And what did you come to understand about that silence? What did that mean?
If it wouldn't be for my grandparents, I probably wouldn't know anything about love, because my father had issues and could be unpleasant. But grandmother and grandpapa would sit down. When I went to live with them, of course, grandmother cooked. Grandpapa never did cook, but grandmother cooked. But as she used to say, his grandpapa's name was John Brown. And she would say, John Brown, I don't mind cooking, but I'm not washing the dishes. And that was it. Well, I was there. And so he was like, well, Nikki will wash dishes. And yeah, thanks, Grandpapa. And so they would go and sit on the porch, and they wouldn't say anything. I would hear nothing. And then as you get older, you realize that silence is just love. It's simply comfort in the love that they share. And so I learned a lot about how we treat people and how we depend upon them. Or as Toni Morrison said, and I used to accuse her of stealing that from me, that there's not a bench in America that we as slaves could sit on. You remember when she started that? They started the whole bench, but they became each other's bench, and that's what's important. Yeah, they knew they could keep on it. Mm-hmm.
That's deep. Yeah. Okay. Now, I come from athletes. You talk about, my mom actually talked about playing tennis with your dad, which really surprised me because she didn't even play cards. I never saw her engage in any kind of athletic activity other than walking around the track at Wyoming High. But I didn't realize that your mom played college tennis and also played against Althea Gibson.
Yes, she did. I was talking to Thomas. It was really Thomas broke his ankle trying to shoot basketball. And so I was talking to him the other day, and he had read that. He said, I don't know anything about it. And I said, well, Thomas, we were talking about the U.S. Open. And I said, the only time I've been to the Open was when I went with Billie Jean King, and she was celebrating, not just she, but the U.S. Open was celebrating Althea Gibson. And when we got to her box, to Billie Jean King's box, Aretha Franklin was sitting there. And so it was just so, it was so nice to see her because I hadn't seen Rhea in a long time. And
Right.
if you know, she's my sorority sister.
Right.
So we sat there and gossiped, like everybody else does. It's so wonderful. And I said, your grandmother played Althea Gibson, though she lost. Miss Gibson, of course, beat her, and Mommy was running up. Well, that's to be expected. And I was so pleased that that Billie Jean King did this for, I think it was the 50th anniversary, my goodness, of Althea Gibson. And she had coins made, and she had all of these Black women came, we all were there celebrating with Billie Jean what Althea Gibson. So I do come from athletes, but I also understand that athletics is just a part of who you are.
Right.
It's not, you have to be very careful. And I'm watching some of the young women now. I'm watching Coco, and I'm watching Madison Keys. I'm watching, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed because I watched Whitney Houston, excuse me. I watched Whitney, and I worried about her, and we lost her because there was so much pressure being put on her. And you want to see these kids, go to college, sing with the choir, send in that case, send Whitney, if she had, send her to Fisk and let her sing with the Jubilee Singers for a while, and let her find a home. This is what I'm saying. Not the Jubilee Singers didn't need her, nor did she need them. I mean, she's a star, but she did need friends. And it's very hard when you're an excellent star to find a friend. And so you have to look very carefully, because if you're not careful, you'll be surrounded by a lot of predators, and you'll end up as Whitney did. You'll end up a drug addict, and you'll end up dead, or you'll end up as Prince did, and he was not a drug addict, as you know, but he was still trying to be 21 years old. And it's like, Prince, you need to take those high shoes. Well, that's what the people want. Well, whatever the people want, they came. The door was open when they came in, and you leave the door open when they go out. It doesn't matter to you. You're going to do. I feel that way if somebody doesn't like, and I'm not being arrogant here, Mickey, but if somebody says, well, hell, I don't want to listen to Nikki Giovanni and that crap, there's a button called off. But I'm not going to ruin myself. I'm not going to make my life something that it shouldn't be, worried about you hitting the off button.
Right.
And that's what we really have to keep that in mind. And the kids have to keep that in mind.
Well, it appears that a couple of them are hitting that off button. Naomi Osaka, of course, and Simone Biles, who I just saw on television a few minutes ago. What are your thoughts about what they're doing in to sort of preserve their mental health, as it were?
I think it's wonderful, because you're only going to be young this particular one time. I think that's a good idea. I think you need a friend, and we have seen so many of successful people fall into a group of predators. There's no other way, and they're surrounded by predators, and all of their time is being spent with predators. That pretty soon they don't own themselves. They don't have themselves. And then we end up with either drug addicts or suicide. We end up with bad things. So I thought good for Naomi, because first of all, she made the US Open pays $1 million something. So she won that last year. So how much do you need?
Right.
Yeah. How much do you need? And I don't have, and Mickey, I know you know that, I don't have $5 million. And when I walk out on stage, I don't have 10,000 people listening to what I do. But the people who come, I want to converse with, and I want it to be a pleasant interaction. And I think that the youngsters are listening to people like, I don't know Naomi, I don't know any of these youngsters, but they're beginning to listen to people like me, who are saying, don't let them take your life away.
Right. Now, you and I both work at big time football schools, and as a sports fan, I'm curious to understand how you feel about collegiate athletes, student athletes being paid in this whole name image and likeness mandate that we have now. Is this going to be a good thing?
Yes. Yes, no question. If the coach is going to make a couple of $1 million, he's making it off the talent of the students. So I have no question about it. What I want that nobody is listening to right now is we offer, and I say we, whatever it is, offer a student a scholarship. It ought to be his and her or her scholarship. He ought to be able to take that scholarship and give it to his sister or his brother or a friend. He ought to be able to use that scholarship right now while he's playing ball for whatever. Mm-hmm. And he ought to then, if he goes professional or whatever, this is good. When he comes back 5 years, 10 years later, whatever, that scholarship is still his. I think it's so important that we give him something he can use so that he can lift his family. And right. That's what we're not doing. That is exactly what we're not doing. So we say they're student athletes, but they're not, and we know they're not. So let that scholarship go to somebody in his family, or as I say, close to him, he can lift up with him. So he'll not only be alone, he will not be alone. He'll be able to bring somebody with him.
Okay. Well, there's a certain softness in some of the poems in your more recent work, and the activist in this book particularly is still alive and present in you, especially when it comes to talking about white supremacy. There's a part where you say the only thing that you have to offer, anything, yourself, planet Earth, anything at all, is your white skin. How sad. How sad.
That's true. I said the other day to my class, we were talking about Donald Trump, and I said, well, who wants to wake up and be Donald Trump? And one of my students walked out. And
really?
The door's open. The door was open when she walked in. The door is open when she walked out. The door's open. But I did want to get that said, because who wants to wake up Donald Trump? Who wants to be Donald Trump? Who wants to offer the world the color of his skin? We've been through the Nazis. We've been through that. And I love that poem simply because that's true. If that's all you have to offer, then you're in bad shape. You have to find something else. I know that people are sitting in heaven being glad that I got a poem published, or being glad that I know how to cook, or something. I know that they're sitting there being proud of what I've come through. And they don't have that. All they have is hate and fear. And I'm sorry about that, but it's not my business. That's somebody else's business. And then they'll say, well, Jesus loves me, but Jesus didn't. And all you have to do is you just have to read your own Bible. Jesus was sick of a lot of people, including his father. If you recall, you remember Joseph, because Mary was on the donkey, and she was thirsty. And she said, Joseph, may I have some cherries, And Joseph was angry and jealous. And he said, let the father of your baby.
Oh, right. Yes, yes. Right.
And Jesus was sick of him and hadn't even been born. And he said, bend down the tree so that my mother may have some. And the tree bent down. So we know that Jesus wasn't really fond of everybody. We know, and that's the truth. That at the Last Supper even, that Jesus sat there and he said, some of you people, and I would use other language, but we're on television. I know you betray me. And of course, Judas was saying, well, is it me? Is it me? And Judas just like, damn well who it is. Don't look at me with that crap. And I like Jesus for that. He got away. But I also really like him for the fact that after he passed, after he made his transition, after he did his job that he had promised his father he would do, the first person he came to when he came out of his casket, the first person he came to was Mary Magdalene. You remember?
Yep.
He went to Mary Magdalene.
Yep.
He went to her to say, you've been a good friend, and I just want you to know you're going to be all right. And then he went on about his business. And so people are trying to say, well, Jesus doesn't like this and Jesus doesn't like that. I can read my own Bible.
I got you. Well, let's discuss the evolution of your activism through your writing, though. Your early work was perhaps, I can't think of a better word right now, but a little less diplomatic in tone, but just as intentional as it is today, especially in your mentions of Trump. But have you adjusted your tone, or is it just you being a little bit tired of having to reinvent the same narrative at this point in time in this, what I call regressive renaissance that we're going through?
Well, you just can't keep saying and doing the same thing. I mean, you just can't.
Right.
And I'm proud of the work that I have done. And I'm proud of the fact that I continue. Speaking of spirituals, there's a wonderful old spiritual that says we are climbing Jacob's ladder. Mm-hmm. Every round goes higher and higher. And so I think that a part of my job is to see, where do we go? Where do I go next? What do I do to help us move forward, us being planet Earth? I'm a big fan of space. I am a big fan of Mars. And I think that, I love it. And studying Mars, I want to see many, many more Black kids involved in space. And I'm living here now in Appalachia. And every time America, or anybody actually, wants to get something done, they want something brave, and maybe some would say crazy, done, they come to Appalachia. So when we wanted to send a man into space, where did we come? We came to John Glenn, and we said to him, will you get on a rocket and go into space? And what did John Glenn say? He said, I will, if the Black women, he called them the girls, if the girls say, I'll be safe. And that's what we know. This is what we know, that a white Appalachian turned to Black women. They were the hidden figures, as they call it.
Right.
Say, will I be safe? And the Black women said, yeah, babe, you be safe. I take care of you. I have some chicken when you come home.
I got you.
I love it. And I think that we need to keep moving forward. I'm very fond of the idea of where we are going, because Earth is having real problems. And I don't know that we're going to make it. So it doesn't bother me in the same way. I laugh at my students and I say, well, I'm old, so I'm going to be gone. You all have to deal with it. But, we poison the water. We poison the air. And I have a neighbor, he's not next door, thank the Lord, who fishes. And he's a Donald Trump person, and he fishes. So, you see two things that are wrong. And he caught a 708-pound striped bass. Well, anything that's that big, 700-pound bass. What? Why wouldn't you want it to live? I just, and I signed up, I always vote and everything, but they're not going to put me on trial. He's going to be on trial for a couple of things, not just the fish, because he shouldn't have fished it, it's too big, but also because he was a part of the January the 6th. And I would love to be on trial. They won't let people like me be on trial because they think I can't be, impartial.
Objective. Yeah.
I'm impartial. Yeah, I'm impartial. I know he didn't do it. I would love to be on trial. But I think that it's a damn shame that, again, the only thing you can do in life to say who you are is to show what you killed. So we have to go another step. And I'm excited about the idea of, and I'm looking out my window now, but the idea of the galaxy. There has to be life out in the galaxy. It's illogical that there would not be life in the galaxy. So we have to go and look. But the only people that are going to be brave enough to go and look and to get along with people are Black Americans. Because we're the ones, somebody had said to me, Nikki, you're always talking about space. Aren't you worried about aliens? I said, sweetie, I have lived with aliens. My ancestors have lived with aliens for over 200 years. How long have we been in America? If this isn't an alien, what is? So I'm not worried about something in the galaxy. I'm worried about trying to get through something in the former president. That would be good. I'm worried about Florida and that fool. I'm worried about how many more golf courses do we have to have that the little mice and the chipmunks can't have a place to live. I've seen aliens. I'm not worried about it.
That sounds like another poem. What do you think are the key differences between the civil rights movement and BLM?
Oh, well, I think again, now we are climbing Jacob's ladder. I'm so proud of those young women. And I think we all are, because the civil rights was exactly that. We were civil. We were dealing with the United States, and we were trying to make some changes here. But Black Lives Matter has been global, as you know.
Right.
And it's all over. It's all over the globe. And I think that that's wonderful. And it's led to things like, and again, I'm just a poet, so there's some things I don't know, but at least we have stopped the idea of people in Afghanistan. We are bringing some people for whatever home means. And I think that America has a hard time. We're going to have a hard time thinking of this as home, the soldiers who fought there for 20 years. But I think that Black Lives Matter has shown all Black lives, all lives of color, but then all lives are colored.
Mm-hmm.
But what's not colored? Maybe Iceland, maybe Finland, but so everything is colored. So get over it. Get over the fact that we are of color, and we're going to have to see if we can help save this planet.
Okay. Now, what do you think the role of artists is in this movement?
I think our role is always to tell the truth, and I'm always so happy now that we're not being, crucified and hanged and made to drink coffee, poison, for Socrates and telling them the truth. And they said, yeah, but we don't want to hear it. So you have to drink hemlock. I'm glad that they're not doing that now. They just don't buy you. So,
right.
It works. I much prefer that. And how we deal with it. And I think that I think the main thing that art does is to tell the truth as we see it. That's all we can do. And I worry again sometimes about my students. I worry about some of the young people I've taught, that they are trying to say, "Oh, well, I want a bestseller, or I want to make a movie," no, that's not what you want. You want to tell the truth, because most writers, as you know, Mickey, most writers are never even heard of for the next, it's 100 years before anybody hears of them. You're not. This is not a art. It's not a situation to make money. Art is what you do for your soul,
Right.
and I think that that's important.
Okay. Now, I've always been fascinated by your stories from FIST, especially as SNCC came into being. You didn't go on the road with John Lewis and Diane Nash, but you remain active in the struggle. So, one of the poems.
Dr. Harroway, doctor.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm
No
sorry.
worries.
That's my ear doctor.
Okay.
It's okay.
Okay. And one of the poems, "To Make Me Rain," you talk about FIST, Queen Victoria and the Jubilee Singers. I never knew that. Backstory about all of that. But, tell us what it was like when you were a student there and everything was going on with SNCC and civil rights and Black Power and all that.
Well, first of all, you have to realize, well, you don't have to realize, when King, well, let me take it back. When the 4 young men at Greensboro sat down at the counter, Fisk, like anybody else, we're not going to let A&M do something that we should be doing. So
Right.
decided we had to work in Nashville. We had to get something done in Nashville, and that was easy because all of us went down and picketed downtown Nashville. But as Martin Luther King was getting to be heard more of, and was doing more actually, Diane Nash had started a chapter of Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And John Lewis was in my class at that point. He's going to leave and go with Diane. And he was saying, well, we need to go to Alabama because that's where John is from. We need to go outside of FIST, college. We need to go someplace else. So he and we all loved him for that. But John and Diane and Reverend James Bevel are all going to be leaving Fisk University campus, and they're saying, essentially, come on, come on. And I have to say, we all were looking at them like, I don't think we're going to do that. Well, they ended up, as you know, John ended up in Alabama on the Pettus Bridge and got, they split his head, which we worried about. But John was, he was not afraid of anything. So he's going to continue. And as you know, right after that, we're going to have the March on Washington. And the March on Washington, which people forget, was for jobs and freedoms. The March on Washington was not for a dream. It was for jobs and it was an economic situation, jobs and freedom. And you have to remember, and again, I just think we have to keep giving women the credit that they deserve. But the only woman on the stage for that situation was Mahalia Jackson, if you recall. And she sang, and she was the only person on that stage that recognized what crowds need. She was the only star on that stage. And you look, Martin knew one thing, everybody knew something, but it was Mahalia Jackson who felt the choir, who felt the people out in the on the mall, and you can see it. She pulled Martin's jacket because she was sitting there. She pulled his jacket, and he looked down. She called him Doc. She said, Doc, tell him about the dream, because she knew that the crowd was not satisfied to hear about an economic situation. That's not what they want. They needed something to lift them up. And she said, Doc, tell him about the dream. Now, he had given that speech in, I know, Detroit and maybe even St. Louis. He had done a part of I Have a Dream Today, but she was, tell him about the dream. And then you have this break. And there is a break if you watch it, just a break. And then he said, so I say to you today, I have a dream. And then he took it there. And that's what carried the crowd forward. But Diane does not get, and I don't know what kind of credit you deserve for trying to do the right thing, but Diane does not get the credit for helping Fisk. And after she and John left, there was nothing. I got kicked out of school for another reason. That I went home without permission. Dean said without permission. I said, I don't need permission from you to do. I mean, in my opinion, I still don't. But I got kicked out. But then I realized, of course, it took me about a year. Well, if I don't go back to college, what am I going to do? I'm not. I can't dance. I can't sing. I'm not pretty. I'm not going to make it, in the movies or something. So I went back and we had another dean. And I went back to Fisk and graduated. But John was there on my graduation date, and I used to tease John about that. John Lewis was graduating at the same time because Fisk realized that they needed to give John his diploma. Just he needed it, and whatever else he was going to learn, Fisk couldn't teach him, so do it. And so John was there. And I walked over, like anybody would. I saw him and I walked over and I said, oh, John, we're so proud of you. And he held my hand and I held his. We graduated in the chapel then. And he and I walked down the chapel together. And every time I saw John, I'd see him in D.C. or something. And I'd say, John, do you remember that, we held hands walking graduation? And he said, yeah, I do. And I know he didn't. He probably didn't, remember worth anything. But it was he got his degree and I got my degree at the same time, but for two different reasons.
All right. That's a great story. After everything that's happened in America in the last 2 years with, social justice, the pandemic and everything else, talk a little bit about where we are and how do we fix this? Can it be fixed?
I'm sorry to say, now my age does come in. I don't know that it can be fixed, and I don't know that I'm interested. I think that what the young people are doing is wonderful. I am, as I said earlier, a big fan of Black Lives Matter. And I think that the older generation, which would be me and my generation, we need to be supportive. We're not here to tell the younger people what to do. And whatever it is that they are going to do, we're going to have to be supportive. But white people have to do their fair share. And this, we keep forgetting, everybody keeps wanting, now what are you Black people are going to do? Well, we have saved the Constitution time and time again. So it's time for white people to step up, because we're pretty much tired of saving you all. I mean, not you all, but we're tired of saving America. Every time you turn around, Black people are needed. I was looking at Dunkirk, at not the movie, but at a part of it. And of course, what saved Dunkirk, World War II, what saved Dunkirk was the stevedores who were working on all of the ships. And the stevedores were the ones who were putting men on the ship to save them, because the Germans were closing in. And I was looking at that and I'm saying, no, where are the Black people? And I said, you get tired of American history, of British history. You get tired of all of that. And all of a sudden, there are no Black people. You get tired as a woman. You get tired of watching, for example, just the boycott. And you look at Mrs. Parks, and Mrs. Parks was very important. She was a friend, and everybody. I mean, how could you not love Rosa Parks? But it wasn't just Rosa Parks. It was the women who got up before dawn to start dinner, so that they could then make lunch, so that they could then send their husbands or brothers or lovers off, so that they would not have to come home. They did not need to be on the bus. The bus boycotts, all of them, would not have worked without the women being totally behind it and fixing the food. And we forget probably one of the most important women, and we all loved her so much, was Fannie Lou Hamer.
Right.
And what would Mississippi be without Fannie Lou Hamer? And Mrs. Hamer she got beaten so many times. I mean, it was terrible. But Mrs. Hamer never did stop. And I think that we have to be proud of what was done. I'm very proud of what was done, and I didn't do anything like Mrs. Hamer or anything like that. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta, and I remember when Barbara Jordan was getting ready right there in Houston. Speaking of Houston, Barbara Jordan was getting ready to run for office. And Gene Noble was the president of Delta Sigma Theta. And you just did what the president said. And it didn't matter who you were. So I remember Gene called and said, we have to go to Houston. So the answer to that was, okay. you didn't even ask why, because we had to raise money for Barbara. And it was so wonderful that the Deltas did raise money, absolutely, for Barbara. She was elected, and ultimately that's how we got Richard Nixon impeached, and that was wonderful. Well, technically he wasn't impeached; he resigned, but he was gone. And I think that Kamala, I know you're
AKA.
Well, I know AKA, but that other one too, Hampton.
HBCU, yeah, Hampton.
Yeah. And of course, our Vice President of the United States is an HBCU, and I think it's very important that she came to Hampton last week to be a part of, and I think it's important that she congratulate all of the Divine Nine, because without the Divine Nine, they would not have won. And you can't pretend that it doesn't matter. You have to find a way to put the red and the white on, or put the pink and the green on, or to put she may wear an Omega symbol. You have to put something and say that we recognize that the Divine Nine made this possible, because it did. And you get sick of everybody acting like, well, you just did it. No, we didn't just do it. The Divine Nine worked incredibly hard to make sure that was done.
It's so interesting because you and I both know that HBCUs have a proud legacy of graduating amazing accomplished people, but now there's this big embrace, and maybe it started a little bit before Kamala, but how do you feel about this sort of HBCU initiatives all over the place that, hey, we've got to hire more HBCU grads, so we have to admit more HBCU grads into our graduate programs?
I think it's wonderful, and I think it's right, and I think it's about time. And it's not just going to be the HBCUs. We are not the only people that America has mistreated. We're going to have to reach out to our indigenous community. And I didn't want to say Indian because that's not what they are. And we need to learn what the community is and what they are called. And it's like you've never heard me say, I am an African American, because I'm not. Africa is a nation, is a continent. I am a part. I'm a Black American. That's where I was born. And I think that we need to start to learn what country this is and what it means. And, America, if we're going to stop the pandemic, by the way, we're going to have to deal with not only the various communities of Africa, but we're going to have to deal with the communities of South America. We're going to have to do something, because poor people have to have help. And they have to have help because that's who we hire to handle things. That's who comes up. And if I've said that poorly and somebody calls in, I apologize. But these are the people who do the work. And so we're going to have to make sure that they are vaccinated, that they are in the stream that stops the pandemic. It's going to have to stop. And we know from looking at, Little Red Riding Hood, and we know that Little Red Riding Hood was not just some fool that her mother sent out in the forest. Her mother sent her in a Red Riding Hood because people who had on red were shown to be to the other people. She's a part of the scarlet fever. Don't touch her. That's exactly what happened. So when she goes to the forest, nobody's going to touch her, and she's going to the one person where she perhaps can be safe, which is going to be her grandmother. Now, when we are redoing that story, which I think should not be redone, I think it's wrong. We have the hunter come along who is going to realize that Red Riding Hood and her mother are being, accosted by the animal, by the wolves. But that's not what happened at all. It was Red Riding Hood taking what her mother could give, which is some bread and some cheeses and some fruit, and saying to her daughter, now go to your grandmother. Now, we don't know what happened to her mother, but my guess would be her mother died of scarlet fever, that her mother had given all she had to give. And that's what I talk to my students about. Let's talk about what the folklore is really about. It's about what the mothers have done to take care of their daughters and how they.
I need to take your class. I wish I could take one of your classes. I love that. Interesting take on that. But talking about your students, I remember you wrote once that you write because you have to. I can't remember which book that's in, but at this point in time, are you teaching because you have to?
I'm teaching because I enjoy it, actually. I do. And I said that the first day of class, they're going to kill me for that. The first day of class, I said, hi, I'm Nikki Giovanni. I said, there are people that will want to be called doctor, and there are people that will want to be called Mrs. and stuff. I said, I'm very comfortable with Nikki, so if it works for you, it works for me. Now, I do have to ask you one embarrassing question. So they're all looking like that. I said, if any of you are dumb, I would like for you to leave now. Because dummies always mess up a class. I said, I would like for you to leave now. We'll work out a grade for you, and it'll be okay. But if you leave now, then the rest of us can be happy. So they started, it was like, oh God, we got this fool for a teacher. Who wants to be bothered with a bunch of dumb people? So I have a good class and I enjoy it. And I'm going to have to quit at some point, Nikki. I have a cane. I'm a big fan of Downton Abbey. and
Oh
the
yeah.
Dowager. Oh yeah, the
Yeah,
Dowager has.
Patti Smith and her cane, huh?
I want one. Mine was given to me by an Appalachian. It's beautiful, and it was handmade. But I want one with silver. So I'm gonna look at that. Yeah, it looked like the Dowager, and
There
I
you
probably have to retire. At
go. Right.
not have to, but maybe another year, as long as I feel like I can give something,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that actually I can take something. I learn a lot from my students, and I've always enjoyed that what they have to bring to me because otherwise I wouldn't. There is this whole world out there that I wouldn't know, that I just wouldn't be paying any attention to. Those things they're all running around with the earbuds and they're listening to either music or. And I asked one of my students, and I said, what is that? And she said, well, it's an earbud. Well, my son had given me. I didn't know what to do with it, so it's just sitting on my desk. And I brought it in, and they showed me how to do it, how you can listen. Then you can listen to. I like to listen to music,
Right.
and I enjoy teaching and I enjoy the interaction because I'm not friendly and I don't I'm not and I don't do a lot of community interaction like that. I just
Right.
so seeing the kids is really good because it keeps you kind of awake and kind of on your toes and let's see how we look at this or how we look at that.
Okay. Now, when we were both younger, I remember you telling me how much you enjoyed spending time with old ladies.
Oh,
And I don't imagine too many of them are still around, maybe. But if you do have older women in your life, do you still enjoy spending time with them? And have you found ways to channel all that knowledge at your age with the young people who want to sit around you?
that's what I keep saying to myself. It's only fair because of the James Baldwin thing. And I was 20 years younger than Jimmy when we did that show.
Mhm.
And recently, there's a young rapper who called to want to do a show with me. And I'm 20 years older than she is. So there was the answer had to be yes, because this 20 years is going on. And I kind of like that. I like the old ladies. And so, yes, I do. We play bid whist and I'm very comfortable. I still am with them. And one of my best friends here is an older lady. And, the conversation starts with, oh, I didn't have my bowel didn't move. You always know the old ladies you're talking to because that's all they're talking about. My
Right.
heart didn't do right, or my bowels, and it's a pleasure.
Right.
And most of the older people that I've known that I have depended upon, of course, are gone.
Hmm.
But I'll soon be among that. So
Nah, you'll be here to lock up. You know, we got to keep our smart people with us. Okay. We're going to need you. What are you reading these days? Because this is part of the Lamert Park Book Festival. What pages are you turning?
I'm reading two books that I really love, and I want to take a slow boat to China or something so that I can have time to finish it. I'm reading the Physics of Jazz. No, excuse me, I'm sorry. The Jazz of Physics.
Okay.
And what he's doing is that his position is that the universe started with sound. And I believe that it makes sense because once you keep banging something together, something else comes out of it. And so he's trying to show how jazz has influenced the universe as opposed to how the universe has influenced jazz, which I think is incredibly interesting. And I got sidetracked because there is a book called The Eloquence of Sardines. And his position is that human beings evolved from fish, not anything else, that we
Not
evolved
me.
from fish.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because we can swim. Some of us do have some hair, of course, but we're not very hairy. We have the body fat, and we're just very interesting. We come out of water, and of course, you can go without food for an incredible period of time. You can go without food for, you know, a month, something like that. But you can only go without water for like 3 or 4 days. And then you're going to die. And he's saying that this is your ancestor. This is who you belong to. So that's where I am in dealing. I have one student, is talking about smart, and she is a vet student. So in class right now, I guess everybody wants to, you know, get rid of us. In class, we are discussing how this makes sense, because it makes sense to her and it makes sense. There's nothing wrong with mammals. It makes sense to me. But the idea of us coming out of the ocean, and that's where we had the fins, and then we learned to walk. And as we got to the edge, we learned that we could stand. And then we had the fins, and then we learned to use those two fins. You know, you've seen the fish. Those two fins, and we learned how to stand on them. And that's what got us where we are. I haven't gotten to where we are with teeth, because fish, as you know, don't have teeth, and mammals do. So I'm not sure how he's going to explain. But those are the two books that I don't read much fiction. And I could probably put that another way. I read Toni Morrison and Edwidge Danticat.
Okay.
And I just don't read anybody else. But I do read a lot of nonfiction. And I am always interested in how did we get here? How did this evolution occur?
Right.
And I think it's fabulous.
Okay. I'm going to send you a picture. I was in Morocco once, and they served up this big fish, you know, on a platter with the head and everything. This fish had teeth like a tiger. You know, I was like, I'm not eating. It looks like some beast from another world, you know, but yeah, it was crazy. I don't know what that was. I was not going to eat it. But just to wrap up, I'm very curious after all your accomplishments. You know, you've got this incredible legacy. Anything left on your bucket list at this point in life? Things you haven't done, want to do?
Well, I don't know if I would call it a bucket list, but I think it's still interesting. Well, I think life is interesting. And so I always do recommend it. My students laugh at me, and my friends laugh at me when I say that. But I think it's a good idea. But we were up in Iceland, by the way, Mickey, this summer. And that's the only place we've been. And the bones of a fish came up on shore. And I took a photograph of it. And it used to have teeth. But again, that's an unusual, you know, sharks have teeth. So I don't want somebody to call you and say, you know, sharks have teeth. But what we're saying is, when we look at, this is why he calls the book The Eloquence of the Sardine, because those little fish don't. And they're going to have to evolve. And those fish are going to evolve they're going to get teeth by the time the sharks and things come along to eat them. So I'm not putting anything away, but I've been to the Antarctica, which I wanted to go to, and I've been, that's wonderful, and we've been to Iceland. I wanted to go to the Arctic Circle, but Oslo was not allowing any ships in. And if I get lucky, the BBC had invited me to go with the British. They do that nature show, and they had invited me to go. And if they get lucky, and if at any point Oslo allows them in, and they call and say, Nikki, we're being allowed in. I want to go, because I'd love to go to 94.0. I'd love to go to the top of I've been to the bottom of the earth, so I'd like to go to the top. But it's just good to see what I learned. You know, you look at your little birds. My birds they lay their eggs, and you know, I sit out, and as I say, I sit out because I have high blood pressure. So I sit at my fish pond and drink a glass of champagne and bring my blood pressure down.
There you go. There you go. Well, Nikki, it's just been delightful being able to speak to you virtually in this format. And Godspeed. Keep teaching. Keep doing what you're doing. and look forward to maybe seeing you soon. I missed tennis this year. I really wanted to go because I haven't seen Osaka play live yet, but couldn't get there. But maybe next summer.
I think next summer we should be there. And of course, we have tickets, because
Right.
we have my mother and my attorney bought a box a long time ago. So
Okay.
most likely, we'd be delighted to have you as our guest. Okay.
Great. Love it. All right. Thank you, my friend. Have a
Take
great
care.
day. We'll see you soon. Cheers.
Bye.
Amazing, right? Now, I know you learned something during that conversation because I sure did. Again, thank you so much, Miki Turner, and of course, Nikki Giovanni, for the insights and knowledge. We are all better for it.